Hey, Jimmy Valentine, that was a really great game-winning score you had there at the sporting event.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. You can look for that card really soon at Colorado Coins, Cards, and Comics. They got tons of sports memorabilia.
Jimmy Valentine, RKO Radio News. Jimmy, what makes Colorado Coins, Cards, and Comics your favorite comic store in the Colorado area?
I'm telling you, forget about it. A comic collector like me, I can save 20% on a hold slot. Duh. Plus, it's hard for me. I'm on the road all the time. If I want the Amazing Spider-Man and I'm not around, it's in my hold slot.
Jimmy Valentine, what do you have to say about your recent allegations about steroid use?
I'm not going to answer that question, but I am going to tell you that if I want to get Magic the Gathering cards, I go to Colorado Coins, Cards, and Comics. The little square Jimmy Jr., he loves those. So go to 6700 Wadsworth Boulevard in Nevada, Colorado. They'll take really good care of you.
Hold on, Jimmy, one more question. Wait,
Jimmy.
No, don't go yet. For barbecue that can't be beat, try Birdman Barbecue Sauce. Available and original and spicy. These robust, full-flavor sauces have the awesome power to kick your taste buds in their face. And for that smoking taste on everything you eat, try new Birdman Smoke and Rub. Caution! Meat left unrubbed may suffer from flavor performance anxiety. You can pick up Birdman Barbecue at local area Ace Hardware stores, Ruff's Barbecue in Golden, and the Danny Cash Hot Shop off Broadway. You can also like us on Facebook at Birdman BBQ.
Does this sound familiar? You're interested in purchasing that new action figure, but aren't sure if it's worth it?
Well, come check out PlasticExplosion.com, where you can go to find all the latest and greatest action figure previews and reviews.
Every week they'll be bringing you reviews and picks from your favorite collections, such as
DC Universe, Masters of the Universe Classics, Marvel Universe,
Star Wars, Transformers,
and many more.
Come check us out at PlasticExplosion.com. That's PlasticExplosion.com.
Welcome to another awesome interview, hopefully, that the Real Nerds did. This one's at Mile High Horror Fest. Again, we met Jeffrey Reddick, who is the writer of the Final Destination, the first one.
Yeah, actually just Final Destination, not The Final Destination.
Yeah, I always forget that there is The Final Destination. Final Destination is written by Jeffrey Reddick, who is a really nice guy.
Huh.
He kind of just came over and we asked if he'd sit on our podcast, and of course he said yes.
Yeah.
Of course, like he's...
Yeah, because why wouldn't you want to be on this podcast?
He very graciously said yes.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. He also wrote a movie called Tamara, which I really liked. He wasn't as thrilled about it, the final product, as I enjoyed it. He also...
Which is part of what's just interesting about his interview to talk about, to
because
listen to how
really
he talks
honest.
about, the way things have been changed.
And he also wrote the remake of Day of the Dead, which is not good. Which I told him it wasn't that good. But while I was there, he offered he would sign if you wanted to buy his treatments for these movies.
Yeah,
like he had a booth set up. You could get his DVD of Final Destination. He'd sign it, or you could purchase the script treatments. And I was more interested in the script treatments because I wanted to see how he wrote the movie. And his original script treatment for Day of the Dead is way better. And I'm just talking in the 10 pages that I read of it, had a better thought-out story, and they changed a lot of it. So that's a bummer.
Yeah. And what was so fascinating about him was just how nice and understated he is. I mean, you'll hear it in his voice here in a second, but to then turn around and then go like, oh, and then he made Final Destination, the movie that is almost an excuse to just watch people die in horrible ways.
Yep.
It's just funny to hear him talk about sort of his little twisted side.
And also, because Jeffrey was instrumental in bringing this guy over, in fact, the only reason that Dan Myrick, the co-director of the Blair Witch Project, came and talked to us. I'll never forget, we interviewed Jeffrey, and we're sitting there talking, basically saying, oh, we can't get Kane Hodder can't be on the show because he has a contract or something, which is fine. Yeah. And we're saying, oh, who else should we talk to? Is there any other filmmakers? And then Jeffrey came up to us and says, hey, I got Dan to come over and sit down and talk to you.
Well, we were eating our burritos or whatever for dinner, and he just sort of ran by real quick and was like, hey, Dan's going to come over in a minute and talk to you guys. And we were like,
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. See, I wanted to flag him down and be like, "Do we owe you 12% for
yeah.
you know,
You're our agent now, so
for hooking us up?"
So thanks, Jeff.
Yeah,
We
that was
appreciate
awesome.
that. And Dan was fascinating.
Oh yeah.
It makes me want to go see the Blair Witch Project again. I'm not that big of a fan of it, but talking to him about how he got it going is really fascinating.
Oh, you can't not listen
And
to
it's
him talk
innovative
and
for the
just
time.
have so much respect for the guy.
And so it made me have a new appreciation for the movie that I want to see again.
Yeah.
And I remember the movie not being terrible, but
No.
not in love with it like some people were. But it makes me
Right.
want to see it again. Maybe if I look at it with different eyes, because I saw it, after the hype and everything. So
Yeah, and part of it is just that from a film historian perspective, it's a big deal,
significant.
Yeah, not just in the way that it was shot, but the way that it used the internet and all of that, which we talk about in the interview.
And it's cool too because he was also really candid when we asked. He said, "Well, what did you have to do
Yeah.
with the sequel? Because the sequel is, like a real movie. It's not found footage or anything."
Right.
And he said, "Well, they really wanted to make another one, and we said, okay, go ahead and make it."
Yeah.
And so listen to both these gentlemen. They're really fun and fascinating, and we hope you enjoy them. Welcome to Real Nerds Podcast. I am Ryan. To my left is James, and we are sitting with
Jeffrey Reddick.
Jeffrey Reddick. And now you are a screenwriter, correct?
Correct.
And I mean, I know what you screenwrite, but you want to tell the people that are listening to us what you've screenwritten?
What I've screen-written.
Written?
I'm just making up words now.
Me too. I don't. You're the writer. You should tell me that I'm stupid.
I have to write it down for it. Well, Final Destination is probably the main one, and the remake of Day of the Dead, which I'm sure will get boos and hisses from many people. But, we can talk about that later.
Okay, sure.
And a movie called Tamara that
I love that movie.
Yeah. I like it's I do I'm like stuttering.
Yeah, you're fine.
No, it's kind of like the ABC Family version of the script that I wrote, though. Like that's what I joke
Really?
about it, like because it was really a hardcore like R movie when I wrote it, and they kind of watered it down. So I actually really enjoy it now.
Yeah.
But Lionsgate originally was going to put it out theatrically because it was really edgy and sexy and.
They frowned upon it.
And then when they got the script, or saw the movie, they were like, "Yeah, we'll put it out direct to video."
Oh, that's a bummer.
But it's a fun movie, and Jenna
It is.
Dewan is awesome. So
I have a quick question. Did you come up with the idea of Final Destination?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I'm crazy. No, it came. I was on a plane going home to Kentucky, and I read a newspaper article or a magazine article about a woman who was on vacation, and her mom called her and said, "Don't take the flight you're on tomorrow. I have a weird feeling about it," and the plane crashed. So I was reading this story. I think it maybe was in People magazine or something, and that kind of got the idea, put the idea in the back of my head about, that's weird.
Very.
And back in the day, well, you still have to do this, but to get an agent, they say write something for a spec script for something that's on TV. So I wrote an X-Files episode and used that as the setup for that. We never actually submitted it to the show, but because one of my friends, I worked at New Line Cinema, one of my friends was like, that's a pretty good idea for a feature. You should really try to flesh that out some. So
it's a brilliant idea for a feature is what it is. Because the truth is, I was telling Brad before we started, it's one of the more... It's very honest in what it's doing because it's a great setup for just like, hey, we're just gonna kill some kids.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It just works.
It's
out
like a
really
slasher
well.
movie with death is the slasher.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it taps into everybody's fear of flying. No matter what anybody says, I think everybody's terrified of flying.
Right.
Yeah.
And man, there's so many iconic moments in that movie where the jet goes by the window and it explodes,
yeah.
and so that's crazy. Like I wouldn't. I guess you get inspiration from the darndest places.
Yeah, it's funny where inspiration comes from.
Was it a hard script to write? Finding out what you wanted death to represent?
Well, it was very interesting because I worked at the studio that made it, so I kind of had to go outside the studio to get the project set up at the studio. So one of my friends worked for Warren Zeid and Craig Perry, who are producers. They did American Pie and Final Destination, and they were looking for a horror project. So I took this idea to them, and we developed it over like 6 months just as a treatment. And New Line just could not get their head around having death as the killer. They're like, that doesn't how can they fight death? That makes no sense. And so it wasn't until the producers threatened to take it to Dimension that New Line's like, okay, we'll buy it. So they bought it, and then I wrote the first draft of the script, and then they went out to directors, and they brought James Wong and Glenn Morgan from the X-Files on board, and they did a pretty massive rewrite on it.
So if they did a rewrite, what was your original idea for it then?
I mean, a lot of the stuff is the same. I think the biggest thing was the way that death got them, because in my version, since Death kind of fucked up the first time. Because Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite movie of all time, the original, and so a lot of my work is influenced by that. And so in my version, Death kind of used each character's guilt, which is kind of what I did in Tamra, to make them kill themselves.
Yeah.
So there were like in the movie, like Alex's best friend gets hung in the shower. In my script, he rigs up a noose in the garage, and when his father comes home, his father opens the garage and accidentally hangs him.
Oh, that's
so it's it's
chilling.
It's a little yeah. So it was, but I think the Rube Goldberg way that James Wong and Glenn Morgan went was actually really smart because it made people start looking for death all around you.
Yeah. Sure.
So that was a change. I thought that was actually a pretty brilliant.
Yeah, and Death in It's never really materialized. He's kind of a phantom, correct?
Yeah.
And is that something you always envisioned him as? Or?
Yeah, and New Line did when I wrote the first draft. They made me in the third act like I had this kind of entity, kind of phantom-y thing show up at the very end for like 5 minutes. Not 5 minutes, for like 5 seconds.
Sam Elliott in a hat.
So they did want me to have some kind of representation of it at the end of it. But James Wong and Glenn Morgan fought not to have that, which I'm glad because you don't death is
because I think it kind of gives it more scary because you don't know exactly where he's at.
Right.
I mean because you'd never see him.
Yeah.
And it's like a phantom.
It's like a force
it's
like,
force. Yeah, better word. So man, it's awesome. And then you did the Day of the Dead remake.
Yes, I did.
And I love the original Day of the Dead because that's another one where a lot of people don't like it too because it's really bleak.
Yeah.
But I imagine that was a kind of a hard project to do as well because, well, I mean, obviously they had to give you some sort of directives to write it, or were you given free rein?
No, it was interesting because they actually hired Steve Miner to direct before they brought the writer on, and they also had a shooting date and a release date set before they brought the writer on.
Oh.
Which is always
just how you want to work, right?
Always the best way to make a movie.
Start with deadlines and no ideas.
So I actually got hired based off a treatment that I wrote that was actually really pretty faithful to the original movie. But then once I got hired, they started making me change everything and take it further and further away from the original. So it was kind of annoying because I was doing all these interviews like going, hey, the fans are not going to be disappointed. It's faithful but irreverent. And then all of a sudden it was like completely...
Did you always have it taking place in Colorado?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to get mad at you for it, but I mean, it doesn't seem... it's not kind of the same feel of the original.
Yeah, no, it's a different animal. I think it's a fun zombie movie, but I think if it was called any other movie,
that's probably why.
I think that it would have done. People wouldn't start hissing the minute they hear the Day of the Dead remake. But it's better than Day of the Dead 2, Contagion.
Yeah, it is by leaps and bounds.
But I think yes.
So, what was the original idea then for the Day of the Dead? What did you originally have planned? And
it was pretty much the same. Because it was interesting because the studio had the rights to remake Day of the Dead, but they couldn't link it to the other Dead movies.
Okay.
So it couldn't. It was a weird. Yeah, it had to be a self-contained story, and it couldn't. So it couldn't be like 5 years or 10 years into the zombie apocalypse like the original Day was. So I came up with this whole virus idea in this town, but I basically had everybody underground in the bunker at at the beginning of the second act, and a lot of it was experimenting with Bud trying to find a cure, and Logan like tormenting him, and and the zombies are outside, and so it kind of followed a lot of the format of the original, but there was just more action in it.
I was just curious too because I think one of the biggest detractors from the original is nobody likes the characters in it because they're all horrible people.
Right?
Did you write it as the people are more likable? Because even in the one they shot, I think Ving Rhames is pretty good in it, and you like the people, so it was something you're going for too.
And I always try to make characters at least relatable and likable. Like you always want to have somebody that you love to hate, but yeah, it's actually funny because I didn't even think about that in the original. That the characters are pretty. It was a bunch of assholes stuck in a bunker.
They're horrible.
I didn't even think about that. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's just...
no, I did. Wait a minute, I thought about that intentionally and totally wanted to
make people cooler.
Yeah.
So, what are you writing anything right now?
I'm working on a couple of horror projects. So, one's called Dead Awake. It's about sleep paralysis, which I'm really excited about. We have a director who's hopefully getting the financing together by the end of the year. And another project called Good Samaritan. I'm a very supernatural horror guy.
Cool.
And we're trying to get the financing for that as well. So it's a funny business because everybody's always, you've got something, and you just got to wait and see if it happens or not. So.
Do you mind if I back up for a second?
Yeah.
What was your first thing you sold to? How'd you get to work at New Line, and what's the first writing thing you sold?
Well, the New Line story is actually pretty funny. I was 14 years old. I'm not going to take you through like my whole life. Don't worry.
Okay, you know what? You can. We're cool.
No, but I was 14 and I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and totally blew me away. It's still my favorite movie of all time. And I went home and I banged out like a prequel idea and found out the name of the studio from the video box and called and found out the president's name and sent him the prequel idea. And I got one of those, we don't take unsolicited materials, letters back. Yeah. And so I wrote Bob Shea back and I'm like, listen, sir, I spent $3 on your stuff, so you can take 5 minutes reading my story.
Yeah. Stand up to Robert Shea.
I know. And he wrote back and he said he appreciated, I forget how he said it. I have the letters, but he appreciated my, not my surliness, but my
gusto.
Yeah, and he actually read it. So I became pen pals with his assistant and him over the years.
Oh wow!
And his assistant's name was Joy Mann, who she recently passed, but just a sweet sweetheart. And when I was 19, I moved to New York and I got an internship at New Line. So I started working there. The first thing I actually got hired to write was, and it didn't get produced, was Pumpkinhead 2, which I love the script that I wrote, but the company that had the rights to it, like, they had me and another writer write a script, and then they didn't go with either of them, and the rights went to somebody else. And
bummer.
Yeah, so I really like my Pumpkinhead script. I still love it. But
well, they still make them, so you could still,
yeah, mine
try
was
to
kind
get
of a
going.
direct sequel to like the first one.
So you need Lance Henriksen, basically.
Yeah.
And if he's not in it,
well,
then...
it was like kind of Haggis was kind of the witch was in it, but it kind of told her backstory and then kind of set up one of the newer characters. But Bunt, the kid that helped Lance Henriksen, told him where it was 10 years later, and so he's like 19, and he goes home because his father's sick, and his friends decide to surprise him and go back to his place because they've all done this. They've all gone to each other's hometowns, except he's never invited them to his place. So they're like, "Oh, we'll surprise him," and they go back, and somebody dies tragically, and Pumpkinhead gets.
Pumpkinhead
always
comes back.
Pumpkinhead, how he is.
So, do you mind if I ask you, do you remember your idea for Nightmare on Elm Street prequel?
You know what? No, and it pisses me off because I never knew I'd be talking about it. And I wrote it on that back. I typed it. It was like that really thin. I don't know. You guys look young. I'm 43. How young are?
I'm 31, younger. So I'm not that young.
Well, they had this really super thin paper that you used to type on.
Yeah.
And so I had it in that, and I lost it. I don't know what I don't remember any of it except I remember it was Freddy was killing people, and then at the very end he got burnt. It was kind of a typical prequel. 14-year-old
yeah.
I just didn't know how dark you're going to be at 14. Was he the molester at 14?
Yeah, I did have him. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
I
I haven't been molested, so that's good to know.
Most normal people have the darkest minds. I found out.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny about the horror crowd is they're the nicest people. You meet all these people. It's like Kane Hodder and all these people that you think would just be crazy, and they're not.
Because I'll be honest, you're the really nice guy, and that you wrote really macabre stories is kind of taken aback.
Yeah, I can act a little fucked up if you want. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you can say whatever you want. We're explicit, and we're on the internet, so we don't have to listen to the FCC.
Yeah, fuck you, FCC.
Yeah, fuck you. We get a fine from the FCC.
So was it the swearing? It was just that you got mad at the FCC.
Yeah, we got mad at the FCC.
Yeah.
What is your writing process? What makes you connect with something right away? I mean, obviously you said the People magazine story, but do you find something in a script? Do you find the ending first and then write the, or do you at the beginning?
I usually kind of come up with concepts first, and then I used to write treatments, 12-page treatments, which back in the day you could do because studios develop stuff, but they don't really develop anymore. So I still kind of have that mentality of writing the story out first, but it usually starts with an idea that I think is interesting. Sleep paralysis is something that has a lot of history to it. Basically, when you go to sleep at night, your brain shuts your body down so you don't act out your dreams. And sleep paralysis happens when you wake up, but your brain doesn't turn your body on. So people wake up paralyzed, and their brain starts getting flooded with their neurons are flooding their brains with images, and people report seeing somebody in the room with them, or somebody on their chest choking them, or some man in the corner. So there's all this mythology behind it that I thought was really interesting, and it was based on a true phenomenon. And my script, Good Samaritan, is kind of based on the Kitty Genovese story. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It was in New York, and this was back in the 70s, I think, maybe, or 60s. But this woman was attacked and raped, like, in the courtyard of this apartment building, and nobody helped her. And the guy left and then came back later and found her in a stairwell and killed her. And they've done all these studies. Apparently, they found out some people had called the police, but it turned into this whole big thing about how could this woman be killed, and all these people stand around and not help. And so there's this whole bystander effect theory among psychologists that if you get a group of people together and they all witness something, people are kind of freeze and wait for somebody else, or think somebody else is going to do it, or wait for somebody else to do it. And that story's always haunted me, and so I kind of...
Yeah, that was a horrible story.
I know, it's a horror... And it doesn't exploit that story, but it's about some people who witness a guy getting assaulted in a park and don't help him, and somebody videotapes the assault, and it gets out on the internet, and so the city turns on the witnesses, and they start dying, and you're not sure if it's supernatural or if it's a real killer after them.
That's a great idea.
So yeah, I was excited, but it's been a tough sell because it's they're like, why don't you just go make it like Final Destination? I'm like,
yeah, that's probably a big, I don't know if you'd say it's a cloud over you, but I mean, Final Destination's so popular, and because you probably get credited for every Final Destination, correct?
Yeah, I get based on characters created by, which basically means since Death is the only character left, I created Death.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
But that has to be kind of a thing where they say, well, you made Final Destination, you can make another teen slasher movie. You don't have to.
Yeah, well, it's funny because at first they were always like, bring us something like Final Destination, and then I would bring them stuff like, and they're like, oh, this is too much like Final Destination. And then okay.
Well,
and that's why I went and wrote Tamara, because I just wanted to write something fun that had everything in it that I liked about horror, and that's why I wrote Tamara. It's kind of a, screw you guys, I'm going home.
I'm going to do what I want.
I cannot write another Final Destination right now. But I think the sleep paralysis script could be.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrifying thing too.
And a lot of people have it. Like since researching it, I've talked to so many people who've at least had it once happen to them, and it's where they just woke up and couldn't move, and it freaked them out. But other people have had like
everybody out.
Yeah, and we kind of set up this whole thing that once you learn about what's behind it, you open the door for it to come after you. So hopefully,
there's a really good there's a really good episode of This American Life where they talk about this, and there's this girl who's talking about how she gets sleep paralysis, and she says that when she told her mother about it, her mother said, "Oh, it's just the devil sitting on your chest."
Yeah.
And she said that, and it's an old legend that that's what's happening. But she said that as if like, well, that'll make you feel better.
Yeah, it's Satan.
The devil's just
Satan
sitting on your chest when you wake up in the morning.
That is hysterical. Yeah.
Yeah.
They call it the night hag syndrome a lot of times because a lot of people see this old woman sitting on their chest, like choking them.
Crazy.
So there's a lot of mythology. It's very fascinating.
That's very fascinating. I'm just fascinated listening to you talk about it.
Well, do you have a couple $1 million?
I do. You can tell by my sweet setup here that I'm just rolling.
That's why I rolled over here because I'm like, this is the sweetest podcast setup I've ever seen. And you guys look like real nerds.
And we are real nerds.
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
See, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I wasn't going to be on, but apparently I'm a little funny today.
You are awesome. No. So, is there a place where we can find you online? And
I feel like a twin girl when I say this, but I'm on. I just tell people to Facebook me.
Sure.
I'm a Facebook horror. Like I haven't set up a website or anything, but but Facebook me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Makes me feel young. I'm okay, Facebook me. That's what all the cool kids are doing.
Is there anything you want to promote while you're on here?
No, it's a. Like, I don't know if any of those projects are going to move, or I don't know what's going to happen.
I hope they do because they sound incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And, you really made Final Destination was really fresh.
Yeah,
and you telling the stories about you're making now, it sounds like more fresh horror ideas, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
because the genre really needs fresh takes every once in a while.
Yeah. No, I just appreciate the fans. Obviously that's the biggest thing. Like.
And I'm glad you didn't come up here with like a torture porn movie. So that's good.
That was my next movie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I just crush you?
But I wasn't going to tell you guys about it.
I was going to say since you're credited with death as a character, can you go
I think you should be able to go to any studio, and if they have death in a movie, you should be able to take credit and get a piece of that script.
I should start suing people. That is awesome.
Some like really fancy dramas. It's like, well, that character died of
Meet Joe Black.
Yeah.
Sue Brad Pitt.
That's awesome. I need to totally do that.
How did you promote your new movie? Oh, I sued everyone in Hollywood who was making a horror movie.
I haven't been able to get my next movie made or any of them made, but it was fun suing people.
Thanks for stopping by, sir.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Oh my gosh, welcome to another exciting filmmaker interview on Real Nerds Podcast. I am Ryan, this is James, and we are sitting with...
This is Dan Myrick.
And Dan, what did you direct? You directed one of the most influential horror films of all time.
Yes, I directed The Exorcist and The Shining.
So we have Stanley Kubrick here, and he has risen from the grave, and it's really awesome that we're able to get him on.
It is a horror fest.
It is. So crazier things have happened. No, actually, Dan, you have directed the Blair Witch Project.
That's right.
Was that 99? Is that correct?
Yeah, it came out officially in 99 through 2000. But we actually shot it back in 96, so that's how long it took, yeah.
Is that how long it took you to finish the movie and get it released or noticed?
Yeah, well, it took us almost 2 years to edit it.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So what was the genesis of the movie? And because now found footage movies are the coolest thing that's happened since I don't even know what, but you're kind of the... I don't know if you're the first one. It has to be one of the first.
Well, we weren't the first. I think we found out later on. There's a film that was shot back in the 70s called Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh yeah,
and it was the same kind of premise, found footage movie. But yeah, I think Blair Witch has just popularized it.
Yeah.
You know, but we weren't original with that kind of premise.
It was something of a phenomenon. That coupled with sort of the hype around it and the mystery at first of whether or not it was real. All of that combined. Just sort of ballooned it into something huge.
Yeah, I think we were the first that kind of did the internet marketing fact or fiction surrounded that whole thing.
Which in a way might even be more influential even than the found footage stuff was.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
That gets pointed back to quite a bit. Anyway.
So how did it start? Did you come up with, you guys come up with the idea of just this videotape that was found and it was scary, or how did that happen? What was the...
Well, I mean, both Ed Sanchez, the co-director, and myself, we were big fans of those old series like In Search Of and Legend of Boggy Creek, which was kind of a faux documentary about Bigfoot. And we always liked, we were kids when we saw those films, but how they came across as being authentic and real. So we always wanted to do something that kind of played on that part of our brain. And I was sort of notorious when I was a kid for doing hoaxes and stuff about, fake aliens and stuff in my neighborhood. So that was sort of the fertile ground where Blair Witch came out of. And then we said, well, why don't we create some kind of weird folklore in the Maryland area, which is where Ed lived at the time. And one thing led to another, and we discussed about, making it about these three kids that went out to shoot something that we would have done, and they disappeared, and all that's left is their film. And because we were kind of getting into the video age, then we could get a lot of stuff on video and use that as a lot of our material. So one thing leads to another, and you build on it, and that's kind of, how it kind of took shape. But originally, it was just being fans of those old kind of, TV series with Leonard Nimoy and those old kind of fake documentary shows.
That's really cool because, the movie starts off just basically like your normal documentary, and then it kind of just takes unusual turn after unusual turn, and obviously that stuff was pretty planned out, but the immediacy of the dialogue seemed almost like it wasn't scripted, it just happened there, and this is what's happening. Maybe you can elaborate more. That's how I felt watching it. Is that something true or not?
No, it is true. We kind of dubbed it method filmmaking. Basically, we wrote a script without dialogue, and we auditioned actors for over the course of a year that had to have really strong improv skills. So our whole audition process was improvisation. An actor would come in with a monologue, and we'd say throw out the monologue, and we'd run them through drills to see how well they thought on their feet. Because we knew when we got them in the field, they needed to be able to think on their feet. So we wanted to control the narrative, but have them talk and react to each other very naturally, because that's the first giveaway for us in a fake documentary, is that everything seems scripted and the camera's conveniently at the right spot. And even if you're not a film enthusiast, you pick up on those cues, you know. And
easy.
So we tried to make it as much like a documentary as humanly possible, but still control the narrative. And even with the actors, when they came on set, we gave them profiles of only what their character would know. So we gave them backgrounds of their own characters. You know, Heather had a background of why she was doing this documentary, but the other two guys, both Mike and Josh, didn't know why they were out there. So we wanted them to ask her. So we got a lot of very natural dialogue that way, and we were able to control things throughout that process. We had to reset and do other takes and stuff like that. But for the most part, we got a lot of really good moments that look natural because of it.
That's crazy. So you shot the movie, and I mean the scene. Obviously, the most famous scene, I think, is when Heather, she's crying in the camera and saying, "I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that."
Yeah.
And that was all improv.
Yeah. Well, the scene was scripted. We had that in the script. But it was a beat. It was like Heather goes off by herself after seeing the stuff in the sticks, and this is what we called the confessional. It's your time now to confess that you really fucked up, and you got it. And this may be the last moment you're on camera, so go do it. And then she made up the dialogue, but we set the stage for her to do what she needed to do, and she just came through with flying colors.
That's so cool because, I mean, obviously you guys didn't have a very big budget.
Right.
So by not shooting certain elements, it kind of made your mind play with you, saying, well, what did I just see? Those sticks you saw for sure.
Yeah.
But what brought them there? What are they running from?
Right.
You know, it's. I thought that was such an effective way of making a film because it just touches a certain nerve with you because your mind, because you don't know what the Blair Witch looks like.
Yeah.
So now you're thinking about her,
Yeah.
and that's a really interesting technique that I think a lot of filmmakers don't take advantage of.
Well, the thing is the power of suggestion is incredibly intense. You know, if you can plant something in someone's mind before it happens, what they conjure up is going to be usually a lot better than what you can, you know, put in a dummy form or even CGI. So, and you know, our budget limitations, probably worked for us in that regard. So, but we were very conscious about. If you go back to the beginning of the film, we were setting up that power of suggestion, setting up that story, the backstory, what was going on, the interview with Mary Brown at the beginning. She did that little kind of creepy horse lady story. We're just laying the groundwork for the audience, and then the audience did the work for us down the road. When things are bumping in the night, now everyone's thinking it's the Blair Witch.
To me, that's pretty ingenious because you're right. I could never. My head of the Blair Witch would be different than yours.
Yeah.
And if you just set up just the little things in it, then your mind will just race all over the place.
Right.
So that's cool. And so at the end of the movie too, I think is kind of a controversial part too of the movie.
Yeah.
Is they all go in the basement, they face the wall, and then the camera tips over, and that's the last thing you see. Is that the last thing you scripted, or did you have something? A reveal there, or anything, maybe a little tidbit that you can relate?
It's funny. Ed and I didn't have the ending to the movie until like 3 days before we started shooting. We weren't sure how to end the film, and we set this whole kind of fact or fiction premise up, and we wanted to kind of walk this line between believability. So we didn't really want the witch coming out at the end or some monster or whatever that would blow the whole thing, right? So how do we have a somewhat like what the fuck moment at the end, a satisfying ending, but not betray the conceit of the film. So it took a long time for us to kind of figure that one out. So we had, different versions of ideas of Mike doing a bunch of different things, but we opted for him standing in the corner, which was just kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And it's something you don't see, hits them, and it ends. And it's funny, like 2 years later, after we sold the movie, Artisan Entertainment at the time tested the film, which they normally do.
Yeah.
And most of the audience didn't know what the ending meant. They were like confused. They were scared by it, but they were confused. So Artisan had us go shoot 5 new endings for the movie. And we were still broke at the time, so we'll give you some money. Or, okay, we'll go shoot them. So we went up and shot them because we were broke. But it was pretty cool. But we shot 5 different alternate endings. Really, they were all pretty bad. Mike was all bloody. There was one version of him on a crucifix. We had all these. and none of them worked, so they opted them out. They throw them out, and they went with the original ending. And strangely enough, that's one of the most talked about aspects of the film is that ending. And it's just one of those things that you really have to kind of go on instinct. And it's and there was an interesting thing at one of the screenings that when their audience was asked whether or not they understood the ending, most didn't understand it, but then when they're asked if it scared them, everyone raised their hand. So that's really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sometimes you don't know why, you're just scared, right?
Exactly.
After 3 years, why did Artisan pick you up? Like, obviously you were shopping around a lot. Like, what convinced them to take it on?
Well, Artisan had released Pi the year before, which did pretty well for them.
Yeah.
And it was like $5 to $8 million release, which was huge for that little nothing indie movie. And so they were kind of on a roll. And when we screened at Sundance, we had sort of the usual suspects kind of circling. Miramax was there, and New Line, a couple of others. But what we liked about Artisan is that they kind of really gave us a strong pitch on how they wanted to market the movie, and they embraced our website that we had built and kind of our underground plan that we were going with, and so they wanted to kind of take that up a notch and go out to college campus screenings and stuff like that. So we really liked that enthusiasm they had for the film, and that they were going to get very creative with the release and really get behind a theatrical release for it, where we weren't sure if we were going to get treated the same way at Miramax. They might have just bought it and stuck it on the shelf, so we heard those horror stories, so we went with Artisan, and they paid a reasonable amount up front, and they gave us a decent back end, and then the movie just blew up, and it was just beyond anyone's expectations.
Well, they definitely had a amazing marketing campaign.
It was great. Yeah, John Hegeman, who was running the marketing department at the time, did a wonderful job going to college campuses. They cut the trailer, and they took our website and kind of made it basically worldwide, So they did a great job and embraced the film. I mean, it's hard to see that nowadays. So many films don't fit in a nice, neat little box, and you really have to kind of understand the personality of the film and the demographic for that film and build a marketing campaign around that. And sometimes it takes time to build that, and it's just not done that much anymore.
Did you know you had something special when you made it, or was it a project where you wanted to make it as like a labor of love, and then that Artisan picked it up, you had a party, and you're like, finally, someone got what I wanted out of this movie, or...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say special because, when we were young, stupid filmmakers, we just had our circle of friends, right? Like anybody does. And when we pitched our idea, people liked it. So, we think this is cool. And this is great, And so in our small little sphere, it was doing really well. And then Ed and I had a discussion. So, we might have something here. And it wasn't until we got into Sundance that we started getting a real taste that this could be bigger than we thought. But still, it was pretty contained. It was a festival darling. We were very happy. We thought we might get a really good TV deal or something, or a limited theatrical. Because, the reality is it was a movie shot on High 8, and it was very small, no names or anything. So we were realistic, But it wasn't until we got into Cannes where it went international, where we said, okay, this could be something special. This could be something bigger than we had thought.
I didn't even know it went into Cannes.
Yeah, it went into Cannes, the Director's Fortnight. Wow. And then we're starting to get interviewed by New York Times and places like that, and we're on a panel with Ron Howard. Like, what the hell are we doing here? And then it started getting a little surreal, but so yeah, it just kept building and building and building, and it was just one of those things, one of those kinds of movies that come along where everything sort of intersects and it worked out.
Well, we've talked to a lot of filmmakers here who are, where you were, 15 years ago, where they're trying to get money made, or they've made a short film and they're trying to make it longer and things like that.
Right.
And you basically just told us that it took you 2 years to edit the movie and a year to get it sort of made and all of that. How, during all of that time, was it like just a passion project you were doing in the free time that you had? How did you even get the money together to make?
How do we live?
The little element. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what did you have to do? Did you just do the Kevin Smith thing and just take out a bunch of credit cards and charge it all to that?
Well, a little bit of all of the above. I mean, we had friends give us some money. We had a little bit of investment from some friends, credit cards, and ironically enough, we were working for Planet Hollywood at the time, cutting their videos for inside the restaurants. You know, like Wesley Snipes videos and stuff like that.
Right.
We were doing all those.
Oh, yeah, I remember Planet Hollywoods.
Yeah. So the money we were getting for those, we were putting into our movie and also paying our bills. And so it was a real struggle. That's why you have to kind of spread it out over 2 years. You know, you just can't take 6 months off and do your movie. You have to do it in between the lines, right? So it was a little bit of friends donating, credit cards, whatever we had left over for cutting Planet Hollywood videos, and we just pieced it together. And again, fortunately for us, Blair didn't need a lot of money. You know, we weren't trying to do Star Wars here, right? So, but you know, we finally got it done, and the biggest expense, quite frankly, was back in those days. You had to strike a print to get into Sundance. And that set us back like $90,000, you know, just to be screened in Sundance. Where now I say here's a Blu-ray and you're good to go, right? So, and I think like the next year or two, they started accepting digital submissions. We're like, oh, you know, that investor got a lot of money, you know. But yeah, it was a little bit of everything. You just have to find a way, you know.
Were you involved in the sequel at all?
Our only involvement with the sequel, Blair Witch 2, was initially they approached us to write and direct, and we felt it was a little too soon. And so they got Joe Berlinger in, who's a great documentarian, and did a script that we felt kind of broke the mythology, but we trusted Joe, and Artisan wanted to kind of move it into production real quickly. So we said, well, you guys do your thing. You have our blessing. But we were a little concerned about it kind of being self-referential because it kind of talked about the movie in the movie, right? Yeah. But, we were feeling, I mean, Blair Witch just went kind of berserk. You know, there was so much hype, and it was just so overboard. And we were like, kind of think it should cool down for a year or two. But Artisan, no, it's, you know, we got to do it now. It's strike with the iron's hot, right? And I'm like, well, if that's what you want to do. So it was a little tug of war there because we were wanting to wait a little while, but so they put it out fast, and it didn't do as well as the first one. But I mean, what would? You know, I mean, that's kind of hard to match. But yeah, so then it came out and it did what it did. We were kind of disappointed because we just felt like they should have waited a little bit. And
well, I was confused by why is it. Not a documentary style. Why is it so like?
That was their choice. That was their choice. Actually, the first, several minutes of the film starts off like a documentary, which this is cool, but then it goes into normal movie mode, and we're like, no, so that was Joe's choice, and that was what Artisan wanted to do, and we just felt like they didn't understand what the first movie did, and as much as I respect those guys, I felt that. It was kind of made for the wrong reasons, It was one of those things. Blair Witch, had we pitched that to Hollywood at the time, nobody would have made the movie. It was just something completely out of left field. So it's just one of those things. You deal with it and you move on. But we have a sequel idea that we'd like to do, and I dropped my cap. But we have a sequel idea that we'd like to do and think it could be cool, and we'll see what happens.
So what else are you working on other than that? Is that the only thing you're working on right now, or what else you got in the pipeline?
I've got a couple other projects in the works right now. One's called Under the Bed. And real briefly, it's about a true story about a guy that gets the keys from this girl and moves into her house and lives under her bed and videotapes everything she does. And so it's a very Hitchcockian kind of hybrid, everybody's worst nightmare kind of movie.
That's a little creepy.
A little creepy. And there's another film called Kabori House that I want to shoot next year based on this Romanian folklore about this deformed child that lived in this old house in Romania that is rumored to be a ghost, but it may not be. So a couple of horror films. And then I've got a comedy that I'm working on called Reamco, which is a spoof on a lot of those old Ronco commercials and salesmen like Billy May and all that. It's about this fictional business run by this family that they're trying to sell all these goofy products. So it's like Office meets Spinal Tap. So it's kind of
nice.
really whacked out. So all over the map, but having fun.
You got to keep it fresh. So I'm going to go back to Blair Witch. I remember, because I'm such a horror movie fan, that the moment it caught my attention is I remember all the actors were on Jay Leno. And at the time, no one knew that. Everyone thought maybe these actors weren't alive.
Right.
Because,
like it was a snuff film or something.
Yeah, and so, so that's when I knew it was a big movie and a big deal because going back to the marketing, did you tell them to market it that way? Or was that something they came up with saying, hey, let's have this website, let's pretend it's completely real? And
well, as filmmakers, we started the website. We let the website be within the context of the narrative, that it was a website about us, Hacks and Films. We found this footage, and if you wanted to be immersed in the narrative, you could do that. But whenever we did an interview, we always talk like we do now. We always explained that it was fictional, how we shot it, that the actors were all cast and all this and that. So we never tried to fool anybody in the press or the audience if you were listening.
Sure.
But we made that there was enough of a kind of arm's length detachment from the marketing campaign and what we were saying to the industry that if you didn't want to get any spoilers, you didn't have to. If you didn't read Variety or any of those, you wouldn't know that it was fake. So Artisan kind of just embraced that and said, that's what we'll do. We'll just kind of play the actors as if they were, not around. So they kept them hidden for a while, and then they came out with them once the movie started blowing up. But so they walked a fine line with that. So as filmmakers, we were able to kind of have the plausible deniability that we weren't trying to pull a hoax. That wasn't the intention. We didn't want to get sidetracked with trying to fool people. We just wanted it to come across to feel real. That was the aesthetic of it feeling real was different than trying to pull a hoax.
So what you did is basically said, oh, no, it's not real, but you didn't deny people's minds to work in the way, like in the movie works, it's saying...
That was part of the intention of the narrative.
That's pretty awesome.
You need to kind of think and feel that this is playing on that part of your brain, and we theorized, because we didn't know at the time, but we theorized at the time that we've got a generation of people growing up on CNN coverage, videos, stuff starting to get posted to the web, and there's a certain realism with that just operates in a different part of your brain than seeing something that's slick and that it's Hollywood. So we didn't want to break that for the audience. So we try to keep them compartmentalized. So this is how we did it over here, but we let it play out over here.
This might be a silly follow-up question, but I don't think that would ever work nowadays with Twitter and how big the internet is. Because I don't know. You tell me. You were in it. Do you think something like that could possibly work nowadays?
I'm always pleasantly surprised. You just never know. Someone comes out with something completely new. They blow everybody away. They rewrite the rules. So I'm always a big believer that never say never. I don't think another Blair Witch would work necessarily because I think audiences are a lot more sophisticated now. A lot of people are trying and fall victim to that conceit, I think. I'm certainly not going to try it, really again. But I think another form can come out and do that. I think there are ways to get people to buy into that narrative. We just haven't thought of it yet, and somebody else will. It's just.
The closest thing is the Joaquin Phoenix rap movie.
That
one had a hoax for like a year and a half.
Yeah, but
that blew up in his face.
No, it didn't work, and nobody liked that movie. But it's still like they had people convinced for a little while.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue there too is that we let the press in on it early on.
Yeah,
and we allowed them to be in on kind of on the conceit. So they were real friendly towards us, and they wanted the movie to succeed because it was so different. It was so anti-programming or counter-programming to Hollywood, and they were kind of in on it. So they embraced it because of that, I think. So until later, then it was fashionable to hate it. But
yeah,
it's just the way it is.
So, you don't have to reveal this part, too. So you said you're working on a sequel to it. So would you still do it as found footage at maybe a different time, or would you try to shoot it a little differently? You might not want to reveal it because you're working on it.
We struggle with that a lot. We definitely think we have an idea for a found footage version of the movie, but we also like the idea of exploring the mythology that we've created. There's I have a fantasy about doing a whole Rustin Parr movie of just that house of Rustin Parr and those 7 kids, maybe all black and white or something,
That'd be awesome.
So it's just kind of like we've created this whole world that we could explore that are all part of the Blair Witch universe, but it's not necessarily a found footage film. There's an episode that takes place out there every 40 or so years that you could do a movie around, a period piece even, of a prequel or what have you. And I think the fans would embrace that. I think, this is part of the overall mythology. It's just like Star Trek or anything else. Let's go explore the Klingons. Let's go explore this. And it could be a lot of fun, but I think there's room for another found footage version of it, definitely. I don't think you're going to fool anybody in thinking it's real.
Right. No.
I think that's the wrong approach to take. But again, as an aesthetic, I think it could work.
Yeah, I think it too, because I think you're right. I think the mythology is so rich in just that one movie that you can go in so many different directions that someone smarter than me, like you, can think of something to do for it. Is there a place we can go online to find you and check out what you're doing?
Well, my company's gearheadpictures.com, and you can kind of see stuff, there. I also have a Facebook account, just Dan Myrick, and always updating on what we're doing, what we're into, and like I said, these other 2 films that we're working on, we're hoping to be coming out with those, start shooting those here soon. So.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Great.
I'm always surprised when we get real filmmakers to sit with us and are so awesomely nice. We really appreciate it.
No, I love this stuff. This is what kind of keeps me grounded, and it's very easy. I was telling Jeff that it's very easy to get cynical in Hollywood and kind of, but then you come out to festivals like this, and this is where we were just a few years ago, and this is great. You get this energy.
Yeah, I know. I told him, I said, man, we're going to have to give you an agent fee for setting interviews up for us.
Yeah, you just came running over. He's like, Jane's going to come over and talk to you in a minute.
I'm like, cool,
okay.
All right.
Let me put down the burrito.
One way into the door, and that's all
that wouldn't be an agent fee because I actually set up something for you. So just kidding. I'm just kidding. There, my agent. So.
Thanks again, sir. I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much, Dan.
It's good talking to you guys, man.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks again to both Jeffrey and Dan for sitting down and talk to us. Again, I'm always humbled by a filmmaker sitting and talking to us.
Yeah.
It does my heart good.
And it's just such an interesting look into, the way their sort of perspective on things, and gives you a different appreciation, especially of a movie, if it's a movie that, you're like, whatever, and then you hear them talk about it and you realize okay, this is where all of this come from, and it completely changes the way that you look at movies sometimes.
I agree. So next week we'll have another one, maybe 2 of them. Depends if we got to kind of figure out exactly how we want to put it out and how long they are. So thank you for listening. This has been another Real Nerds interview. Bye.
Bye.